GM, everybody, for a much earlier time than usual as well, actually. Welcome to our audience and our speakers today. Let's get the likes and retweets of the room out, as, yeah, this is a irregular scheduled program for us today on the KIP AI show. Today we're talking AI for education, making us stupider while making us smarter. I'm the stupider in the room, by the way, today, guys. We've got everyone else as the smarter section. Also, we're going to probably touch on Deepseek breaks and then reconstitutes the internet. It's been chaos, not only in the AI space, but the market overall. And we've got some incredible guest speakers along with the team today. So we have KIP, the Web3 base layer for AI, letting AI developers deploy and monetize their work trustlessly and permissionlessly in Web3. Sorry, struggling with a cold today. We've also got Jen, the Chief AI Officer at KIP Protocol. We've got Professor Shalinka Jayatilecki with us today. We've got Will Fan from Open Campus, and we've got Julian, User Satisfaction Agent, and then you've got myself, the stupid person in the room. I'm here for anyone who is just getting into AI to ask those questions and make them dumb it down for me and make hopefully you feel better if it is a little bit over your head on the first one. So, guys, really, really excited for this. Jen, I'm going to get the mic straight over to you. How are you doing? Are you excited for the show today?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited because obviously education is one of our big kind of focal points at KIP. We have been in the education in the education space. Sorry, I'm just doing it to demonstrate I'm not an AI. We've been in the education space since the beginning. I actually came straight into starting my company from doing a PhD, and that was very much in kind of providing services to universities and so on. And we grew from there. And it's interesting that this happened just the week that Deepseek kind of hit the public consciousness. Because obviously in KIP, we've been using Deepseek for a while now. Almost every week in these spaces, we have a bit about, oh, Deepseek is so great. And it seems like the fact of Deepseek coming out and attracting so much attention has been an educational moment for a lot of people. I've had people coming to me and saying, oh, how does this work? Why is it different from GPT and so on? In a way that never really happened with Claude or with Gemini or with whatever else. So, yeah, a lot of people have been learning a lot of new things about AI as a result of this.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely did play the stupid person in the room. I played my card well there because we have been talking about DeepSeek for weeks. And at one point did I put those two things together about Nvidia and the fact that this program, this project, this, company not needing to utilize anywhere near the amount of compute as OpenAI does was going to have the impact that it had. So I was really, really interested to see all of the news that's come out. I think that's why we're hearing it. When the whole market, a whole Western market basically crumbles for a day on the back of this, people are interested. And I think that's definitely going to continue now. I think, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle on this one.
Yeah, definitely. It's, I'm going to share my screen because I was going to share it later, but I want to share something in particular now, I think, which is just the Google Trends, the Google Trends for different models. So I'm sharing that. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but
Oh, wow.
yeah,
That would be a
it's.
very good chart. If I was looking at crypto or meme coins right now, that would be an excellent chart. You'd be wanting to buy there.
I know, right? It's amazing the sort of the fact that the DeepSeek has just shot past Claude, and everyone in the AI sector was kind of a big fan of Claude. We were all sort of into its more hippie-ish friendly persona, but DeepSeek has really kind of blown past that, which is impressive.
Yeah, how are you guys feeling about this? Like, do you feel it's getting the attention it deserves? Because I know we've spoken about it a lot, but we have also spoken about Claude a lot. We've spoken about these other areas in AI. I know that if the information is correct, because we've also debated that on the show, 5 million seems like a very small amount of money. But given, let's just believe that for a second, how do you feel about the attention that DeepSeek's getting right now? Is it warranted, or do you feel like it's a bit unusual being in the space, like how much attention it's actually brought in?
Yeah, I don't know. Professor Linker, what's your take on DeepSeek this week?
So interestingly enough, I hope you guys can hear me. So on LinkedIn, when I went on LinkedIn, I must have been sitting under a rock, but LinkedIn just exploded with DeepSeek and every single model about DeepSeek. So I didn't want to wait around. I jumped on Hugging Face, obviously, and tried a few things. But you really need to take it apart. There are certain things that DeepSeek does do for the naked eye, so to speak, much better than GPT or Claude or wherever it is. But if you actually try to do an API call, GPT still works better. That's my personal experience. Same with the image generation. I found that if your prompt is longer, it's not going to be able to do what, say, for example, DALI 3 does, because it can't. It has a maximum number of GPUs it can use. It just times out. So your prompt has to be very succinct for it to work well. That's been my personal experience because I'm still obviously experimenting with it.
Yeah, this is
How
something
about
I've heard time and time again, Jenna. It seems to be better at the initial input, but like the logic, and also I think people use like code as an example. And Jen, I think you'd probably be able to speak to this better than me. But it's actually giving you the code in the first place is one thing, but actually searching for bugs, etc. We're still looking at GPT and some other platforms for that.
Yeah, I think people are still really exploring DeepSeek. I mean, usually on these shows, every week there's a new kind of quirk of DeepSeek that it's become almost a regular segment. Something strange that DeepSeek does hyper well or hyper badly or whatever. I don't know. Will, what's your DeepSeek take of the week?
I think competition is great. I'm obviously more on Jack's perspective. I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow with you guys. I obviously come more from the education background, so seeing a lot of our portfolio companies, constantly trying to innovate and experiment with these tools. I think it's great that the market's kind of shaken up right now because today you've really had these Western market leaders making moves and making plays, but it's always great to see these decision makers trying to rethink and re-innovate. I think also, when speaking with our community of learning experience designers, teachers, instructors, I think it's a net positive for the industry. And at the end of the day, the more the merrier in terms of tools to help scale impact and scale access.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I think it's just kind of getting a bit more deep into the educational aspects. I think people have been, even sort of experts have been realizing that, wow, there are things that are possible that we didn't think were previously possible. So there's one big one would be the 8-bit floating point training that Deepseek did, which basically that means it's much more economical. It's much smaller. You can run it just on CPUs. We've got a DeepSeek instance running just on CPU and that is the full R1. The full deal. It's not a cut down version. And everyone kind of thought, oh, you need the 32-bit floating point, which essentially it's 11.
Oh, Jen, we're losing you a little bit there. It sounds like there's a bit of an echo. If we can get you closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry. It's
all good.
Is this better?
A little bit of an echo.
I think it's a physical echo from the room.
Okay, would you try muting? Is it because you're downstairs and you're...
No, that does sound better actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. Where was I? Okay. Yeah. But to get the kind of level of precision that they have, you have models like Llama, like GPT, one presumes, that use sort of basically very low numbers in their multiplications when they're calculating what their answer should be. And Deepseek cut that right down to a much shorter number. And obviously that requires a lot less resources to run. But everyone figured that this would result in much less precision as well. And apparently it doesn't, which is quite interesting. They did have to do immense amounts of engineering to just feed this thing through the training GPUs in the way that they wanted, because they had to optimize everything. But yeah, this has been kind of a revolutionary experience. These things don't need to be huge. I'm not. I think they might have exaggerated how much money they saved a little bit, because everyone wants a good number. But yeah, I think that they probably did save a lot by doing this, which is quite interesting. And then you've got the other thing, the fact that they did this, the group relative policy optimization, which made me see the bit, because I had a project to do this back in 2020 and we didn't have the funds, so we never did it. I could have been Deepseek. I could have been a content.
This year, we're gonna get that this year.
Yeah,
it's not too late.
And what's really interesting about that is instead of giving a right answer, giving a question and then a right answer and a wrong answer to train it, what they basically do is start out with a bunch of questions and a bunch of right answers. And then they have the model generate a whole bunch of other answers and then grade them based on how close to the right answer they are. And what this lets the model do is come up with a sort of abstraction of rightness in this context, which means that what it looks like Deepseek has done is it's defined mathematically what reasoning is. And it's just applying that to every problem, which means that one assumes it's going to be hyper good at solving problems it's never seen before. And it's also kind of teaching humans about what reasoning is as well, because the average person doesn't really have much of an idea about it. It's hard to describe what reasoning is in the abstract without giving examples. But Deepseek seems to know, and it seems to simulate these sort of heuristics and these approaches that humans engage in when they reason. And this seems to help somehow, despite the fact that it's all maths, it's not a human. So I'm sharing my screen now. Can you actually see that?
Not yet. It normally takes a couple seconds. Here we go. It's here now.
1 second. Yeah. So one thing that people noted is that if you ask it maths problems, quite a lot of the time it will count on its fingers, even though it doesn't have any fingers. And that seems to help slow down its thinking and make it reason more step by step. And it gets better answers as a result, which is really interesting.
Wow.
I mean, 1 + 1 = 2 is not exactly a hard question, but the fact that it's counting it on its fingers is something that's kind of fascinating. So yeah, that was my sort of main takeaways. But then at the same time, you've got a lot of other stuff going on, which is obviously the financial stuff, which we've seen the fact that this thing kind of crashed Nvidia. It's something people are thinking, oh well, maybe we don't need 1 million Blackwells to train the next model. Maybe there are other ways of doing this.
How do you
But
feel
I don't
about
know.
that? Because
Yeah.
I've seen basically very polarized takes from the AI community, and then the more biased community who are very heavily invested in stocks and trades. So, and I guess the big question is, just because it's better, does it mean that it will not need all this compute eventually, and like Nvidia is going to fundamentally just not be as intrinsic to the world that revolves around AI as we thought it would be? Or does it not just mean it works faster? That, because that's sort of where I would lean towards, would be, look, if they can do more with less, they still have the opportunity to use more. So doesn't that just more multiply the speed of which they can do this, as opposed to not require the the software hardware that it actually requires? I'd love to get some takes on this.
Yeah, I mean that was my argument. I was arguing with a guy in the office. He was saying, "Oh, well, we're going to need less GPUs," and I was saying, "Well, maybe this makes it more accessible, so more people will be buying smaller GPUs to run locally, something like that." But Julian would have a better take on the finances, I think.
No, I think this whole ruckus, if you like, it's chaos theory, man. Because there are 100 different agendas at play. I find it really, really interesting, right? Okay, like first unpacking whether I'm almost 100% sure they didn't spend just 5 million. 5 million is probably in the setup, but they have an army of geniuses. These army of geniuses aren't cheap. I don't think that's calculated in, right? And they've been doing it for years and fanatically too. So the 5 million is unlikely, but so on one hand, they want a low number, and I'm sure there will be a million different competing opinions on how much you actually spend. But it doesn't matter, right? The 5 million number is out there as a narrative. It's great, right? And even watching the comments on reports, on news reports on this, it's quite interesting, right? Because the whole capital structure of, say, Silicon Valley funded companies are structured to raise maximum, spend maximum, raise the next maximum, spend the next maximum, right? So everyone is kind of incentivized to do that story, which kind of directly helps Nvidia stock price. But then you could also think that maybe the people who are really pushing this narrative that Nvidia is overpriced are the people who want to buy Nvidia, not the people who want to fund Nvidia. I mean, they want to fund it so that they can get an entry, because this thing is a rocket ship, a rocket ship, right? So I believe that too. I believe that there are equally motivated people who says, look, give it a break. Let us enter, because Nvidia is still the clear market leader. They're still going to be producing a lot more chips. And what you said just now, okay, Jack, you're playing this normie character very well, but actually no,
Thank you.
you're playing this normie character very badly, because what you said just now is tremendously insightful, right? Just because you can use less doesn't mean you should or you need to. And the part about the light builds, the reason why we've been using Deepseek in our enterprise deployments is because it's light, right? And in fact, we wanted to push out a new product, a new package, if you like, in which we put a lightweight model onto NVIDIA's Jensen Nano, the lightest hardware, so that it's easier to sell, right? It's easier for clients to deploy it locally. So yeah, it's light, but you could also, if it's light, then what theoretically it should work as well if you just put in the usual number of, Silicon Valley volume weight class type of GPU, and we throw it at it and see what it does. Then the last thing I thought, which was very interesting, was that, like Will said, we are all fans of innovation and competition, but a lot of this is incremental improvements in many different places. Like Jen in the office often like would point out this thing that Deepseek does extremely well, and probably other places where it doesn't do as well. But it's all incremental improvements in a few places, and suddenly all at once, right? It's suddenly all at once. But sometimes all at once may not even be a matter of capability; it's just a matter of awareness, right? And awareness is just like, okay, so there's a narrative being pushed. It is useful for a great many people that this narrative goes out there, whether you are well, no matter which side of the geopolitical war or in AI that you're on. There are people on both sides that want this narrative to be out there, right? So I think it's chaos theory. The first my first line. This whole thing, it's very, very interesting. You just start unpacking it. It's not just as simple as a eccentric billionaire wanting to build a model. This thing is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's honestly, I just think the next couple of years in this space, it's going to be so fun doing these shows and just seeing it all unravel and being a part of that a little bit. So yeah, really appreciate you guys for putting these shows on, and can't wait to get into the education side as well.
Yeah, we should get started on that. We've got a lot to cover on the education side. And I wanted to get into the education side via the concept of digital twins. And because that is something that I know Prof. Shalinka has been working on, and also Will in the context of Open Campus University. This idea of, maybe a hyper busy teacher can have 2 or 3 clones to help them out. And the extent to which the clones are treated like clones of the teacher, and the extent to which they're treated just like models or like search engines. The psychology behind that, I think, is something fascinating. It's like we've been seeing kids who've grown up in an environment with Siri, with Alexa, with toys that are connected to AI and talk to them, and they talk to them like entities that are sentient, but they don't talk to them like humans. It's something else entirely that we're kind of seeing develop. So I guess, Prof. Shalinka, do you want to give a bit of a background to the research that you've been doing? We'll kind of jump off on that.
Sure. So the digital twins that I've been working has nothing to do with creating digital twins of humans, but of different systems. But to be honest, I like the concept. I'm not sure how that we go about modeling that, because humans are one of the most difficult things to model. So it's difficult to make profiles, though there's always a possibility. But the digital twins that I've been working on, there's two of them. One is a digital twin for a water management system, or a water distribution system, where we're looking at modeling the entire network, the pipelines and everything, to be able to predict any anomalies, any restoration that is needed, to be able to predict the demand maybe during a storm or vice versa. And the other digital twin that we're looking at is for a data center network, to be able to, again, be able to profile different customers who are using the data center, and also to look at anomalies, to be able to reroute traffic in the case of an anomaly. So interestingly enough, the research center that so I'm an academic as well, and I belong to a research center. There's quite a lot of digital twins that are being designed for different things. There's a health sector one as well, which I can't talk to about because I'm not doing the research on that. But it's been an interesting thing where you are looking at a physical system. And what I also realized when I started on this journey of digital twins, that the definition of a digital twin is very different in different industries. So to be honest, if you did want to create a digital twin of a human academic, you could probably do that. It's just how you define it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have been working on is trying to predict what someone's opinions would be on an unknown question based on their previous opinions. And different people have very different levels of entropy in their opinions, is what we found, which again mirrors the sort of the digital twins of physical systems. There are some that you can kind of simulate quite well. There are others like weather systems that just are really hard to do. And I think it's to do with the degree as well, the degree to which people trust the simulations. So that in our experience building digital twins of humans, there are some people who are absolutely ready to let themselves be replaced and they trust the AI. There are some that really get the uncanny valley feeling very hard immediately and they don't like it at all. They don't like the idea that something might give an opinion that isn't there really intending to do that. I'm more on the skeeved out side of things, but I was really surprised actually when we started working with Open Campus how many people are just ready to let themselves be simulated in AI. I don't know, Will. You have more experience dealing with these people than I do, clearly, because you were confident from the start that people would want this, and I was like, people want this.
Yeah, I'm actually already embracing AI agents taking over my socials, and I think a big part of my work and thesis has always been leaning into the chaos and leaning into the new technology and innovation. I agree with Shalinka that a big part of this whole transition process, still takes time, right? And we've seen the same challenges when it comes to onboarding teachers, students, parents, universities, government infrastructure into this entire new way of working, new way of learning. What's been fascinating from the education landscape is looking at comparables that have been successful. Some more frontier industries like finance, like gaming, that has already shown a lot of that infrastructure in place. We've been actually looking at a few things in our ecosystem. One is, how do you look at supercharging teachers in their learning experience design, curriculum design with like you said, that digital twin strategy, but instead of it completely replacing the teacher to do presentations or speaking or coaching one-on-ones, there's actually a lot of the boring stuff, repeatable stuff, back office stuff that can really increase efficiency for the human interactions over time. Another thing that we're definitely looking a lot at is student financing. So a big part of our work at Open Campus is, how do you provide more accessible education through Web3 financing? So think about all the processing power, processing knowledge that needs to happen to really understand the digital identity, the credit scoring for this modern learner. And I do think you can't use pen and paper. You can't just use Excel spreadsheets to make this scale effectively. So we're definitely looking at the fringe of where AI can impact a lot of the education space, but not going completely head on recycling, moving a teacher in and out. I think there's a bit of finesse and process, and that needs to come into place.
So, Dr. Linka, I think that ties in with your work. You've done analytics and so on, data analysis in the education sector. Can you tell us a bit about that?
In what sense, Jen?
Oh, so the degree, I guess, to which things have changed, because I think probably everyone who is watching this, they have a clear memory of whatever was current in schools when they were in there. So for some it's going to be pen and paper and ticking questions in a paper workbook. For some it's going to be digital whiteboards. For some it's going to be filling in Canvas style stuff online. Everyone is sort of frozen in time at the time that they were in school. So could you give us a kind of an idea about how the sector has just changed overall in terms of, especially in terms of, I guess, measurements and stuff?
Well, it's interesting that in one form or the other, every university or a tertiary education institute uses something like an LMS or a Moodle, where every click, every minute spent is recorded on logs, and there's a wealth of data that can be used to identify especially student profiles. So one of the things that are actively being done, especially in where I'm located at, is that we are looking at how students are consuming this digital information, because there are courses that are delivered, or subjects if you want, are delivered fully online. So we need to be able to understand, are students engaging with this content? How well are they engaging? Because they are doing what people are doing on Coursera, but in a university environment. So that understanding, so gone are the days that we students even use pen and paper. Not even a single assessment is done on pen and paper. Almost all subjects are moving away from having a final exam. So these are all based on the knowledge that we think students are getting from the LMS or the Moodle. So that data, where they click, where they stay, the period they actually consume that information is very important. So if you think about, in the sense, digitizing it further, you can think about, could we hyper personalize the experience that each student has in a LMS environment? So when they go in, they are able to, the back engines or the agents can create a persona and then understand by the different clicks that they do, where is this student heading? Could we preempt the next step and give them guidance? I think that's a very interesting agenda that I'm personally vested in. Not necessarily I have another project going on with a different organization, but I think hyper personalization is something really interesting in the area of tertiary education.
So that raises another question: the fact that so much is online now. I've seen on Twitter people who are in the sector, who teachers and professors and so on, saying it's actually it's time for a return to pen and paper because that's the only way GPT can't help students cheat. Do you think that is going to actually happen, or do you think we've passed the event horizon of tech now and it's there's no going back?
Look, I agree and disagree at the same time. It's interesting because now I come from analytics and the business school. Whereas if I look at the health sciences, and I've been talking because I am an advocate of using generative AI very actively in my subject. But the way so you have to be very creative in terms of what you are actually trying to assess when it comes to assessments. If you merely ask them to do a report, of course they're going to go tell GPT, give me the answer to this, and they'll just copy and paste. Whereas if you're trying to understand their um, analytical thinking or the creative process. But Deepseek is now throwing a spanner in the works because it actually gives you the critical analysis that it does before it gets to the answer. So that's something I will need to deal with this year. But apart from that, I think it's important to understand that if you really think about the industry that these students are going into, for better or for worse, pretty much all organizations are using some form of generative AI. So, do we try to shield these kids who are going into the workforce from what is really happening in there by going back to pen and paper, or do we try and find ways around to test their creativity or their critical thinking rather than just asking them to write an essay? I mean, that's asking for trouble, I think.
Yeah, I have a question on this actually, Jen, if I have a second.
Yeah,
Look,
go ahead.
I think look, we've seen a lot of like viral sort of moments with teachers against students with AI already. Like if you use any short form platform and the algorithm isn't completely attuned to whatever your niche is, you are going to get an argument between a teacher and a student where a student is in a lecture hall and they have AI listening to the lecture and basically giving them some shortcut rather than writing all those notes themselves. You know, maybe it's giving them some sort of cards, maybe it is just giving them a summary of the conversation, and a teacher calling that outright cheating. And you look at that and you think, well, look, that student could use that summary, then go further and input it further into AI and maybe get the whatever it is that the teacher is trying to request of them, whether that be a paper, whether that be for an exam where they can sort of get around this. But the technology is out there. So I would love to hear your takes on, like, is it cheating? I think just like yes or no, and I know that's a little bit too black and white for this conversation, but it it does feel like we've got an old school versus a new school here. Especially when you look at the lecturers against the people using AI, it also feels like there's something going on around like whether this is cheating or not. So I'd love to get your opinions on this. Is it cheating utilizing AI to help you study?
I have a take on this, but I'll let someone else go in first. I know, Julian, you've been kind of worrying about how your little boy is gonna find a
Hmm.
job when he gets into the workforce. Is it going to be UBI for him?
Oh, my little boy is too little to be worried about that, but I am very concerned because there is a pre-AI world and post-AI world. The answer to Jack's question is it cheating? According to the current rules, they are, right? It is cheating, right? I suppose, right? Also the point that Shalinka said. But that's the it goes back to the point of the pre-AI world and the post-AI world. The tools are out there now, you know. Pandora's box is open, you can't close it back again. So there are always going, I mean, most students, I think, find the reason why conscientiousness among students is so prized, why the people, oh, this student is very diligent, is because it's so rare. Most people are lazy, right? Most students are lazy. I'm always lazy. You find the minimum effort to get the grades or whatever. So a lot of what we talk about in um, our business, right? When we are selling solutions to universities and also increasingly to state level organizations, it's very philosophical. It isn't about the tech. It's the fact that if your educational institutions and the regimes within and the teachers within, um, if they're resistant, okay, no offense to present company, okay, but if they're resistant to the idea of AI, I mean, no offense because present company excluded, okay, if they're resistant to the fact that these things are out there, then and they're sticking to the rules, then you're going to have this conflict, right? This conflict of the students actually being able to circumvent the existing rules very, very, very easily, and
Mm.
the brain power becomes spent on how do I circumvent it without getting caught, which is a waste of brain power if you think about it, right? But it's already happening right now. This is besides the greater issue of what jobs, what if universities and if current, like, human civilization relies on this layers and layers of educational institutions to prepare people so that they can create economic value, so that they can feed their families, then what jobs are out there? There's an even bigger thing which we won't even get into, right? So I think, is it cheating? Yes, under the current rules, probably is, I think. But it's out there, so the rules probably have to change, and the type of things that you have to be learning has to be with AI. So we're quite big on this concept of AI plus, right? So it's AI plus human, so AI plus student, AI plus researcher. It's all AI plus now. So the skills needed now that you don't have to do the now that even if AI can teach you to count with fingers, okay, great, so now you have to think, okay, what is the learning now that there is somebody who can teach me how to count with fingers, right? It's
Oh, that's unusual. I think we're all good. Anyone else have any problems here in Julian? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Shalinka, you're not hearing.
No, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I think the other thing about the digital twins idea is it's the most exciting part about it is the many to many teaching, right? I don't know if it's officially called that, but that digital twin is not one twin. It's 100, is an infinite number of twins for an educator, because it's like one-on-one teaching, right? From you're being able to take the data from the learning progress of the student, and a twin, a version of it, there is a concept of it, okay, a version of that the teacher is teaching the student one-on-one, and rephrasing it, re-explaining it in a way that is, and that would be probably on the education side, in the execution side, I think the most impactful execution of AI in education as a digital twin. So it wouldn't be one teacher. I mean, we're early days yet, okay? So we're going to start with OCU with a twin, but obviously the goal is for it's not just a twin. Everybody sees a different version of the teacher. Maybe if you can imagine it, right? Like students have different personalities too, so they must be motivated differently. What if the digital twin of the teacher is also a psychiatrist, expert in child psychology, right? It's like this one you have to go hard, you have to like really scold them, really like whip them. This one you have to go soft because otherwise they shut off. So that would be like really really exciting, and the tying to the progress of the student and the ability to understand in that layer of infinite customization, infinite personalization, okay, is the lower level. Because just knowing how whether they understand it is just a matter of mental capacity and their affinity towards the subject. But this might sound like overly like psychobabble or those psychiatric type manipulation. But what if it was a trigger word? Because I think that of my for my boy, right? It's like I wish there was a trigger word. I was like, say this, and then he just stops yelling or something, or stops running around, sits down. and, and if we could have a digital twin educator that is somehow imbued with all the learnings of every educator with a digital twin, talking to every student all over the world, oh man, then yeah.
It's a real problem that needs solving as well, right? Like this is something that no matter where you are, like population growth, schools are getting crammed. Like I know in the UK, I know the US is similar. I know all over the world this is similar, and kids are getting left behind. Like just definitively they are, because you can't teach 30 or 40 plus children classrooms with one human. Like it just does not work, especially kids. They're chaos, like literally defined. Like you can't. So yeah, I really really excited by that side of the equation. It's going to be interesting to see how those kids learn and utilize that learning as well, because for me, I'd love to get Will and Shalinka's opinion on this as well, but for me it really comes down to like a thought experiment of the actual position that person is in and how they get there. Because when you look at the viral clips of a teacher scolding somebody for getting a summary of their lecture, you're sat there. I think 90% of people, and maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they're going to be on the student side. It's like they're just getting a summary of the lecture. Is that not like what are we doing here? Why are you that concentrated on this thing? Why are you that scared of this thing? But then put that into like a practical use case of a medical profession. Do I want a doctor that is looking at me that basically just has a phone or some AI version of a phone in their hand, asking it every question that I ask them? Or am I just speaking to an AI agent? Or is there a surgeon out there just like, which bit am I cutting now? Because it's just so wrapped up with this like learning through just asking AI these questions. That is something I'm terrified of, and that's something that I think is either dystopian or is something that's just going to go very very badly very very quickly. So that's my take on this, and I'd love to hear Will and Chalinka's take.
So on the whole surgeon meets AI sector, I've personally been, very, we're going through our own fertility journey, so very interested in the technology and innovation there. IVF, great technology. But yeah, there was a TikTok that I came across where these three surgeons were trying to figure out why this, mid-40s lady couldn't get pregnant. They've all had collectively like 50 years experience, as surgeons in the fertility space, and they ended up misdiagnosing that woman several times, and they flicked the records and the X-rays onto ChatGPT, and within 2 minutes, they actually diagnosed it correctly. So I do think, there's something quite powerful in terms of balancing that hybrid nature. Where did that data come from? How was it able to, accelerate that decision making? And I think that's really the same thing when it comes to the education space too. We've actually already talked a few themes since the last question, but for me, like outside of Open Campus, I run a business school called New Campus. We serve, over 500 of the most innovative tech companies in Southeast Asia, 130,000 learners in our ecosystem. And I think, as we kind of evolved as a business school, one thing that's always been a challenge for me is how do you actually balance traditional brands and reputation, which I do think, markets still, adhere to and aspire towards, but also real world impact, especially as the workforce is getting older, new innovations are going to come into play. How do you actually keep people learning over and over again? So, for me, I really look at first principles because I was a terrible student. I actually spent most of my time trying to game the system than study and get good grades. Sorry, mum. But yeah, I do think, at the end of the day, the onus of an educator and education ecosystem is to help someone learn. And so if the world is actually moving towards this new way of learning or new way of contributing to society, as Julian mentioned, there's definitely a lot of these philosophical questions that are happening. We work very closely with over 300 universities globally, and even through the OCU program, how do you actually onboard this next cohort of frontier thinking professor? I think maybe final note is we don't know what our kids are going to be doing in 15, 20, 25 years. They'll be at our age or a bit younger in 3 decades, 4 decades from now. So I do think having that flexible perspective is so key. And when I kind of look back to my journey, as a student, we were getting told off for bringing laptops into the lecture room, and I'm assuming like the generation before, they're getting told that you're bringing calculators into lecture rooms. So I think it's really the same thing that's happening now with AI and toolkits, and like it or not, it's the same problem that's happening in the workforce now. Like we run programs with students every 2 months, and one thing I really care about is them thinking outside of the box and bringing their secret sauce to the table. So yeah, like I do think that education itself is constantly going through this innovation, and looking ourselves in the mirror and thinking, okay, how are we going to be doing things differently? We know things are going to break, but I think it's also our onus to ensure that we do the right thing moving forward.
Really, really interesting take. I think the only thing because that's a great example, a diagnosis through GPT that 50 years of experience couldn't get to. My slight hesitation to this is it still brought that 50 years of experience to the table with GPT to get to that answer. And my mind goes to what happens when that 50 years of experience is no longer there, because you have, basically a group of new doctors and new people who've been educated fundamentally through AI in a way where at what point do we just get to, somebody just talking to an AI agent and the diagnosis being just taken verbatim for like, okay, well, I don't know because I've learned through asking AI. AI is now telling me this thing, so it's got to be right. Like that's sort of where my mind gets a little frazzled.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
maybe
that.
maybe a last note is,
Oh,
even hardware is super interesting right now, right? During the NVIDIA town hall, the one big highlight was like the future of hardware. And if you actually look at the medical profession, they're already experimenting with autonomous surgeries as well. So I do think there's still an important place for creative human human intervention at the end of the day, building relationships, creativity, innovating something new. But again, like I found AI nothing but super net positive for our industry. And I think, Julian, Jen, Shalinga, I'm sure agree, like how do we continue to tell that story and build the right infrastructure in place?
yeah, I think Jack makes a good point about the sort of needing the 50 years of experience to tell whether the AI is right or wrong at the end of the day. I always kind of make the distinction not between cheating or not cheating, but between are you using the AI to replace yourself or to replace someone else? So I
Yeah.
really obsessively take care of, am I using the AI to think for me, or am I using it to do some task that I could do if I had the time, but I don't have time? So
Yeah.
a while back, I was doing a statistical analysis of some survey results, and yeah, I would use the AI to clean my data because I could do that myself, but it would take me hours and it would be really boring. And if I was a professor, I would hand it off to a research assistant. So yeah, that's fine. And same thing, I can say, I can, how would it best make sense to visualize this ordinal logit regression or something? Because in that case, it's something that I would ask my supervisor if I was in a university. Can I visualize it this way, or is there a better way to do it? But I'm still thinking in this case. I'm not saying, okay, just analyze this data for me and spit out a graph. Then I'll go home. So that is how I kind of always tend to think about this.
Yeah,
But I think, yeah. Oh,
I,
sorry.
I,
Go on.
I was just going to say, Jen, it's like the synthetic data issue that we're currently seeing. That's like it's a much more blown out version of that, where like right now, like these models still fundamentally depend on human data to really be effective, or at least in the most case. And that will be fine for some time, but some of them are already getting to the end of what they can absorb or what data is available to them. And if you then sort of expand that out to where human beings almost stop replicating synthetic data, even with their own actions, and because they're just so trained on using AI that realistically they just become a question and answer system. That's where my mind goes with all of this. Like at a certain point in time, does the experience that we currently have give us just fundamental improvements and improvements and improvements utilizing AI? But at a certain point, do we utilize AI to the point that even a human interaction with it becomes almost like synthetic? And that's sort of where my again playing the stupid person in the room here, but my mind is absolutely frazzled and really enjoyed the conversation
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. We train the AI, but the AI trains us as well. We start speaking like AI and writing like AI, and we grow together in symbiosis, which is not always a good thing. But before we get to the end, I really wanted to go over future predictions. Where is the sector going to be this time next year, or this time in 5 years? And obviously, Will, you have an answer, and I've got Open Campus ready to screen share in a second, so I'll let you talk us through that. But first, I want to see, Shalinka, what is your predictions? What are your sort of crystal ball predictions for the sector?
Well, I'm hoping the academics are not digital twins by the next five years. But if personalization is going in the direction that we think it's going to go, that can be applied. I think at the Jack Orville was talking about, how. Oh yeah, Julian was talking about how do we deal with students. One lecturer can't really work with 100 students and be able to, and Jack was also mentioning this, how kids are left behind because you can't pay attention to every single student. So I think where in terms of whether it's in the education sector or in businesses where you're trying to personalize your website for every single person who comes into it, that's I think that's something that is very much growing, and you need to be able to cater to that. And I think that's where some of the competition is going to also be with in tertiary education, where can I get, maybe I'm a fully online student because that's what my life is like at the moment. So where can I get the best attention? Am I going to be treated as every other student, or will my learning cycle be personalized to my needs? I think that's a real there's a real future in that as well. And like it or not, just to answer a previous question from Jack about whether it's cheating or not, my personal opinion is not. And when you were talking about that, I just remembered something that I posted on LinkedIn. It's a repost where somebody was interviewing Jensen from CEO from Nvidia, asking him, so what do you think about people being afraid of being replaced by AI, jobs being stolen by AI? And he had this really nice answer where he said, look, part of your job profile can be automated. It's been happening since the industrial revolution. So what you need to think about is 20 somewhere between 20 to 50% of your workload can be automated, especially using AI. Jen was saying, you could pretty much outsource some of the mundane clerical sort of work to AI, which it will do absolutely much faster. But then there's the creativity where you have to look at the output and go, is that the output that I'm really looking for? Just day before yesterday, I was looking at how you can use Kling on VS Code, run Anthropic at the background, and then get it to create like the whole code line for using a simple prompt. But how do you know that's going to work? So I think the future is where we are going to start focusing more on, we're actually going to go back and start enforcing the foundation. It's not the same as going back to pen and paper, but it's about, can we give the foundation to the new generation or the coming generation where they can actually use AI? And this is for doctors, psychologists, whatever, whoever it is, and be able to even look at that output and go, is this right? Am I? So our generation can do that, right? Because we got the foundation without GPTs and old school stuff. But for the new generation, if they are learning from AI and they are regurgitating what AI is saying, that's not going to work. I think that's where the education is also now looking at, how can we instill the foundation. I think that's my last note on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. So I guess, and Will, I will share my screen because I have Open Campus open, and you can give us a description of what you're actually currently working on in the next months. Okay, I am sharing now, so you should see it and flash up in a second.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. I think if I were to break down three themes that I'm super interested in, going to this year. One is, obviously, in business, how do you increase efficacy and impact of companies with AI? And this is with a lot of the projects, portfolio companies that we've backed. What we're seeing, especially in the education space, is they are just able to churn significantly more impact with much less human resource. The second theme is supporting frontier markets. So a big part of AI is actually making learning curriculum, learning experiences more accessible. So at the end of the day, that also aligns very closely with the crypto markets, which is where Open Campus plays. Markets like Africa, like Latin America, like Southeast Asia. So being able to scale impact at a fraction of the cost is something that we're very passionate about and obviously invested into. And then finally, one big part of our work, which is working very closely with the KIP team, is significantly enabling mature industries in the education space. So with OCU, it's really a technology that is enabling any professor to supercharge their courses and content. The earliest model right now, think of it as Masterclass meets ChatGPT, and our goal is to really look at that first innovation cohort of entrepreneurial professors, entrepreneurial creative teachers that want to figure out ways of elevating their learning and scaling their impact. And so I think moving forward, I do think that intersection of AI, education, and Web3, is actually a really sweet hand in hand partnership. And again, we're super excited to work with Jen and Julian on how to move forward. Maybe I can pass the baton back to you, Jen, to go into some of the detail.
Oh yeah, so we actually, I will just very quickly shill my wares. Um, so Open Campus does have a grant for professors to get onboarded to the platform. That is a $10 million grant fund. We've already started giving out grants for all kinds of random things. So I know there's an NYU professor that's using his grant to buy drone parts to do a startup with his master's students. We've got people doing digital humanities and teaching humanities professors how to get into AI and how to get into tech and become the new generation. We've got a cooking school. We've got a cooking school that wants to get all of its materials. It's traditional Singaporean cooking and keeping the old recipes alive. So yeah, it's very diverse. And if anyone here is is an educator who's listening to this and is interested in this, please give me a message. So yeah.
for OCU. Yeah, hope to do more of that too.
What a fascinating show. Well, listeners, if you haven't already, please do like and retweet this one. It's very important. And definitely follow Kip and follow all the members
Jack,
up on stage.
Pulse, I do have to shield a little bit on housekeeping matters. Yeah. So yeah, I know we're running out of time, but very quickly. So next 1 or 2 days, Kip will give out our Chinese New Year giveaway, a Lunar New Year commissions on NFA on our missions platform. And also, we will be pushing out. We've been talking about a lot about agents also today, right? I mean, AI in general. So this is the first, I guess, public review. First alpha drop is Kip is unleashing a new framework for agents that can actually improve themselves. Okay, I'll leave it as that, but news will be coming out really, really soon. Basically, no more AI slop, no more of the AIs that only do one thing, and then behind the scenes is like basically a warehouse of little drones, little human drones, even human trolls trying to fix the inputs. We're going to try to build in public a really, really big and experimental platform in which the agents are able to improve themselves on objective environmental criteria. So more of that to come and to be announced soon.
Wow. Well, Jen, I'll hand it off to you. But great
All right.
show, and huge shout out to Shalinka and Will, and obviously you two as well for just educating the masses here. I love it.
Well, thank you everyone for joining, and I'm hopefully going to do this again. I just had someone from NUS's AI and education department tell me he really regretted having missed this space, so he wants us to do another one. And,
Yeah, we should do another one. Sure.
yeah. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and yeah, we're all going to make it. Let's go. Let's see you all
Happy
next
New
week.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks,
New
everyone.
Year.
Happy Lunar New Year. Bye for now.
Bye.
And I don't know if Johnny is ready to actually cut the space. He said someone called him, so we might just be sitting here for a while talking. I do some stand up while we fill the dead air. As far as I know, we are still actually live.
Yeah, we are. We're still live.
Jack, can you send him a message?
I have. I've sent him a message.
Anyone has anything Shalinka, you want to share with us more before we get cut off?
Oh, I don't know. It's very late over here. In Australia, it's past 10 o'clock. No, it's not past my bedtime though.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, that last reveal, Julian, just had me reeling right now because that's so interesting. Because Lama introduced this agent and the rags, and there's another person who's actually doing something in a different space, not in education, where he's what's the word he used? He's giving those agents sort of a reward to train them to be better. It's like, it's the carrot and the stick situation where, you do something good and the agent gets rewarded. Therefore, it tries to do better and better and better. So it's actually correcting itself. And this is used in marketing. So I'm really interested in seeing that space. So that's a really interesting idea.
And it should be getting closed
exactly
now.
it. Yeah.
Johnny has just
Okay.
messaged to say he's going to close it off now. So thank you,
oh,
all
okay.
the listeners.
Fine.
Get the likes and retweets out.
Otherwise, we have to go straight through to forum.